Okay, good.
Hello, and welcome. We are so excited to have you on tonight. Welcome to this edition. This is episode number 11 with Mandatory Conversations podcast with Mike Johnson. And on tonight, as usual, on Mondays, I'm with my co-host, Anika J. Owens. Anika, how are you?
I am good, but I'm going to tell you that
Oh, thank you.
hat is nice.
Oh, thank you so much. Are you a hat person, by the way?
I am. Do
I
you
did
have
not know
women's
that.
hats?
Oh, we sell hats for everybody. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not know you were a hat person.
Oh,
I guess I should have known that, huh?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm just having a bad hair day, so that's why I have on this cap. But I would rather have on a stylish hat.
Oh, we got to take care of that for you. Yeah, we definitely got to get you taken care of.
I need that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. So since we're talking about that, I am, some of you know this, some of you don't know this, but I am not just a podcast host, but I also own a haberdashery here in the DC area, the DMV, JL Michaels Custom Clothing. So behind me, you see all the hats and all those kinds of things. That's one of the things that we sell. We sell so many other things as well. But on tonight, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about something else. Anika,
yes.
What do you do when your spouse suffers from mental illness? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Our co-host on tonight is going to help us walk through this, get through this, and help some of you as well. Before we get started, do me a favor, tag everybody you know, share this with everybody you know, have them jump on with us now. We want to take all your questions. We want to hear from you in the comments because this is a very serious issue that some of us talk about and some of us don't talk about, but many people suffer from. And so on tonight, Anika is going to really help us. I'm going to probably do a lot of listening and question asking on tonight, Anika, because this is definitely your field. And I'm excited to learn tonight and hear what you have to say. So go ahead on and take it away, young lady. Let's get in here.
Okay, so where do we start? Like I said, well, first I want to say that this is such a great topic. When you said, hey, let's talk about this, I'm like, you have missed your calling because you are coming up with these topics that really need to be discussed. And a lot of people don't discuss them. And so hats off to you for actually initiating this conversation because it's very much needed. But when you think about untreated mental illness, you got to look at it in two ways. There's mental health that you know you have, and then there's mental health that's been diagnosed. And then there's mental health that has been undiagnosed. So you have two things there. And so when you have a situation where you can clearly see that something is off in your partner and they won't get tested, they won't do anything to really, hold on, let me put my dog down for a minute.
Sure.
I am so sorry, baby, go lay down, okay? I am so sorry.
But no, you're okay, you're all right.
So when you have those things where a person is not necessarily acknowledging that they're suffering. And so when there's a diagnosis, you're kind of ahead of the game in terms of being able to be treated. But when a person fails to go get diagnosed and untreated, that makes it even worse. And so, it can be a rough ride because a lot of people don't want to admit that they need help. It's like a sign of weakness. If I admit to, there's a big stigma around mental illness. And so mental illness don't destroy marriages. It's the untreated mental illness that destroys marriages because when you are suffering, you don't necessarily acknowledge it. So therefore you don't get treated. And so that everybody in that house suffers.
So Anika, thank you so much. This is a very important topic. First of all, do people always understand that they are suffering from something? Like, so I know people, at least let me say this. I believe I know people who are suffering from some sort of mental illness. And there are many, right? There are a plethora of mental illnesses.
Yes.
But there are some that quite obviously, that are probably a little bit more easier to see than others.
Yes.
What if a person doesn't know that they're suffering from it? They always know this. I'm assuming that they may not know it, as opposed to they do know and just don't get help. What is it? Is that a case or no?
Yeah. Remember, Michael, back in the day when people would say, I'm having a nervous breakdown?
Yes.
It's anxiety. And they weren't calling it anxiety. I remember when I was younger, I used to worry a lot.
Mm.
And that's a form of anxiety, right? So there's levels to it. So there's mild, moderate, and severe. And so I used to suffer from a mild case of anxiety. And it basically is just a function of worrying excessively and not being able to shut it off. So people have these symptoms especially in the Black community, and we don't know what to call it. And let me not even just say the Black community, just all around. We don't know what to call it. So therapy back in the day was for rich people, Black people, we don't get therapy. It costs too much money, but thank God it's more affordable now. But back in the day, it was, I'm having a nervous breakdown, and not really, excuse me, not really calling it what it is, which is anxiety. And I think some people just didn't know how to label it.
Mm. It's interesting you say that, because all of us suffer, at least I believe so. All of us suffer from probably some form of anxiety, but I guess it's when it just gets to be a severe form, when it gets out of control. And so could you talk about that for a little bit? What does that look like when anxiety has gotten out of control, when it's beyond just a little bit anxiety and you're just nervous and maybe you're biting your fingernails, but we're at a point now where, okay, you may need to go see someone. You may need to get some medication to help you deal with this type of anxiety and this stress that you're having in your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, anxiety is the primary thing, right? So then it lends itself to depression. So you start off being anxious, severely anxious, and not being able to control your worrying and those negative narratives, the cognitive distortions that we talked about last week. You start off there. Then it goes into depression. So when it goes into depression, that's a darker place. That's when people start feeling suicidal. And so get to the anxiety. And it's a mild, increase for some people, or sometimes it's if a person just kind of lives with the day to day, it's something that they live with and they just normalize it, and it doesn't necessarily always go to depression. But usually the anxiety starts first, and then it goes over into depression. And if it goes over into depression and it gets to be severe depression, one, you don't want it to go to severe depression. I really feel like when you get to where it's not manageable, you need to seek help. Some people don't want to talk about I may need medication for it, right? Some people I don't want medication for it. And with my patients, I don't always immediately go to the medication. I say there's some natural things that you can do to minimize the symptoms, but you got to eat right. You got to exercise, because really, when you think about serotonin is that chemical in your brain that regulates mood and behavior. There are no tests to run to understand your serotonin levels, but it's that chemical in your brain that regulates that. So when serotonin levels are low, that means, okay, you're going to be more prone to anxiety and depression. So natural ways to increase the serotonin levels is to eat right, to be around healthy people, to exercise. And when you have those negative, intrusive thoughts in your head, to just kind of really combat those thoughts. So those are things that you have to kind of consider when you start feeling anxious. Like, where am I? Just kind of give yourself like a check. Like, where is it? Is it mild, moderate, severe? There are so many online assessment tools out there that you can utilize to understand like where you are in your mental illness.
Before we get too far in talking about the medication and that, could you just literally I don't want to say step by step, but gradually walk us up through what anxiety looks like? Because anxiety, for some people, they may not realize that they're suffering with anxiety. Like, for instance, some of us have very highly stressful jobs. They're very demanding jobs. And I know, because I've seen it and I've dealt with it myself in my previous jobs. People don't realize the more money you make, the more that's expected of you, the more you're expected to produce. You got all these additional stressors, if you will, on your job. And I remember when I was in the corporate world for about 20 years, I worked in IT. A large part of our business was dealing with Wall Street. So every single day, our numbers would get posted to Wall Street. And those numbers had to look a particular way, because if they didn't, it meant the stock would drop. That meant that's tied to compensation. That's tied to employment. It's tied to building out infrastructure. It's tied to so many things. And so the senior executives would not let you forget this. This
Wow.
was something every day we had to do. So when we came to work every day, it's all right. We're looking at the numbers on Wall Street. They're reporting the numbers inside. And when I say that, I say all of that to say this. I didn't realize at the time, but it was stressing me. And it was causing me, I guess, some sort of anxiety because I didn't sleep well. A lot of times I didn't eat like I probably should. I definitely was very concerned about my employment, not on a day-to-day basis, but because I was on a contract, whether or not my contract would be renewed, because sometimes it was things that was out of my control, Anika. I couldn't control them because other things were happening, but it was a direct impact on what I was doing. And I do remember a couple of times I got really stressed out about stuff. I was like, I got to go. I got to leave. Or sometimes I'd have to pull over to the side on the road and be like, all right, let me just not focus on this for a minute. Let me regroup. Let me get myself together and then go back to doing this. Or let me not make this phone call to this person. Because if I do call them now, I'm going to say something crazy or not email somebody now because this email isn't going to go the way it's supposed to. And so I'm saying all this because I want you to walk through what it looks like, because sometimes stress is not to the point where you need medication. You just need to stop what you're doing, reset, and then go about your business and realize, hey, this could be, something where you're being overloaded. You're too stimulated. So you got to kind of bring it down. So could you just walk us step by step? Because some people I know, they may not say it here because they don't feel comfortable doing it. And I hope that you do. If you're listening to us, I hope that you will feel comfortable enough to, say some of these things so you can get some assistance right now, as opposed to not saying anything. We want to help you. But I want people to feel comfortable enough to be able to put that out there.
That's a really good question, Michael. It's like, what are the symptoms, right?
Yes.
Your body gives you feedback. I often tell people about biofeedback. Your body gives you feedback and it sends alarm warnings when you're starting to feel anxious or stressed, right? For me, when I get anxious, I feel it. I start like itching behind my neck, arms, my stomach feels a certain kind of way. I have heart racing. So everybody experiences it differently. But for me, I think if you're paying attention to your body and there's a shift in your body, your biofeedback, your body is telling you something. And I think it's so important for people to recognize my body is talking to me. And so if it's one of those things where it's normal, you don't really realize it. But I think you got to pay attention to the signals that your body, just like you were saying, when you were working in that corporate job, you knew it was a stressful environment. And so a lot of times we kind of just take it, this is just part of the job, but your body will send you warning signs like this is a little too much. And so for you, what were you feeling in your body? Were you feeling dizzy? Did you have a lot of ruminating thoughts? Like I said, was your heart racing? Did you feel like you have to vomit? So there's so many different signs of feeling, overstimulated, if you will, and anxiety. So it varies for different people. And I think people just need to pay attention to their bodies, what their bodies talk to them, and you got to understand what your body is saying.
Got it. So we got to literally, if you're a person who's under a tremendous amount of stress, or even a little bit of stress, I guess for that matter, because you can interpret stress differently, right?
That's right.
What you're saying is you really have to begin to pay attention to your body. And I know this for myself, I do it because anybody out there, if you got high blood pressure, you really got to pay attention to this because it'll send that's something else I noticed when I first started noticing. I'm like, wait a minute, why is my heart racing like this? Right. And you got to pay attention to that because that's a sign that, you're under some stress. And so if you're suffering with some of these things, please pay attention because some people have died from this stuff, right? It can overtake you. And so we don't want that to happen. So that's good. And now that we've kind of dealt with that a little bit, let's talk about what this looks like in a relationship with a spouse, because the Bible is clear about this, especially if you're a Christian. The Bible says, when you are wed to someone, it's in sickness and in health. And a lot of times, Anika, because I've married quite a few people, they don't understand this, right? That especially that health part, because when you get into your 50s or maybe late 40s, as an individual, you may start experiencing some things with your body, right? That you didn't when you were younger. And it might be some things that got to be dealt with because they're chronic. And so it's not just a doctor visit. You may be hospitalized. You may have to have some surgery. You may have to have some, prolonged therapy or whatever the case is. And your spouse, you've agreed that no matter what happens, you're in it for the long haul. If
Yeah.
you're a Christian, when you take those vows, and I tell people this before we get in front of everyone else, I want you to understand this: when you're sick, whether you had no money, whether you're up or you're down, all of these things are going to happen in a relationship, especially if you're married. You're going to experience all these highs and lows and experience in a relationship. And you have to realize God set it up that way so that you two could lean on one another. And it's not the time for you to leave, but it's to stay, encourage, help, assist, do whatever is needed to help them get to a place where they're healthy again. But all of us don't get that.
Yeah, but Michael, what happens though when I think we all have a responsibility to take care of ourselves, but what happens when that say a partner decides that they're not going to get help? They're not going to be treated. Like I said, marriages are not destroyed because people have mental illness. They're destroyed because it goes untreated. And when mental illness, depending upon how severe it is, it
Mm-hmm.
could be a safety issue. If you have a
Yes.
personality disorder like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, it's just like if it goes untreated, now there's a safety issue. So what do you do in that case? I know what the Bible says in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer. But if it becomes a safety issue, you know you have mental illness and you choose, that's just like cancer. You have cancer, you treat it. You have diabetes,
Yes.
you treat it. But with mental illness, sometimes again, it's that stigma, I'm not crazy. And I hate that word crazy. I hate it. I hate it. I don't even like to use the word hate, but I really do hate when people say crazy because you're not crazy. It's
Thank
just how we're wired, and it's okay to need extra help, whether it's therapy, whether it's, medication, it's okay. So in that case, what do you do? So what do you do if a person doesn't get help though?
Yeah. So now I said that to set us up to bring us to this question, right? What
Mhm.
do you do? Because here again, I'm also an ordained reverend. I tell people sometimes in marriage, and I'm not condoning this, but I do understand this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to terminate a marriage for your safety,
Yeah.
right? Because for whatever reason, something's going on, and now your safety, something's put you in danger.
Yeah.
And now I throw this back at you. And I would just say for me, if a person doesn't get diagnosed or doesn't tell you or will not deal with it, I think that's a problem. And that's what we got to talk about, because that's not fair to your spouse. You're putting your spouse in an unfair position. You're not giving them an opportunity to, be the best spouse they can be, because you've decided I'm not going to go get this help that I need to get, that's going to help not just me, but help us. Because what if you have children
Yeah.
and now your children, they're susceptible to all of these different things that are going on. So if you're asking me, I think it's unfair, and I think a very serious conversation needs to be had as to why are you not getting this treatment, or why are you not taking the medication, or why are you just not doing what's needed to be healthy. And if the person is scared or afraid, I can see that, right? And you got to kind of work through. I think I could work through that. But if you're telling me I'm not sick, and we clearly know you are, something's going on, I think that's a problem. And in that instance, then I got to go seek some counseling, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, right? I don't know. If you aren't handling it, why do I need to kind of handle it, right? I'm not sure. So that's when I come to somebody like you, Anika, and I say, I'm having these problems. I don't understand.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, let me give you a scenario. I remember, um, let me give you a scenario. So you have somebody who suffer with mental illness, and their their anxiety or their personality is constantly saying that you're cheating on them, you're not faithful, they're following you everywhere, they're causing you to lose your job because it's almost like, you're married, but it's like you're stalking outside of their place of employment, you're accusing them of, it's all sorts of things, and you become afraid. You become afraid. So in that situation, I never tell anybody to leave their spouse, because I can't say that. I say you've got to make sure you keep yourself safe. And however you define keeping yourself safe because of this said partner has a personality disorder, you got to do what you need to do, because that person is experiencing that person on a day-to-day basis. So, we can very well say, because that's a Christian, I'm like you. It's just like till death do you part. However, if it's putting you in a position where your safety is being compromised, you got to do what's best for you. Like you said, if you have kids, if a person is threatening you, all those things is just like, yeah, at some point, like I would tell somebody, do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. You went down this laundry list of things that you're experiencing. You feel like you can't sleep at night because you don't know what's going to happen. Because not only are they inflicting harm on themselves in some ways, they're kind of expanding to, to say a partner. So in that case, if somebody were to come to me and say, hey, these are my struggles, I would say you got to keep yourself safe. And it's up to them at the end of the day to make that decision, how they're going to do that.
Yeah. Question for you. And I know this is probably tough right here. If I know my spouse is suffering with something, how do I go to them and say, sweetheart, I know something's going on. I can see it. Everyone can see it. I think you know this. You need to get some help. How do you go to your significant other, your spouse, to broach that subject? Because I can't imagine that's an easy conversation to have with somebody that you love, and you know they're suffering with something. And when you tell them, for the most part, I got a part 2 to this, by the way, for the most part, they're going to be like, what do you mean?
Yeah. That's a great question. You come up with a really good question. But once I guess we got to consider what's triggering the behavior. So you're pulling your partner aside and say, this is what, in a loving way, I'm noticing, you're not spending time with friends, you're isolated in your room a lot, you've been calling off work. So you call attention to those things. And so you kind of get a sense of like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's triggering this? I've noticed that, like, because you kind of look for patterns in a person, and then you spend enough time with somebody, you see that things are kind of changing up. You ask yourself, like, what happened? And so whether it's a work related, whether it's relational, sometimes that say a partner could be a part of their stress. It could be infidelity. It could be money issues. It could be, I know for me, when I was experiencing a lot of anxiety, it's because I couldn't conceive a child. It was really bad. And so you always try to, look at the situation and say, okay, maybe it's this, but you don't necessarily want to guess. You want to check with your partner, like, what's triggering this? Is it, if there's some stressors, you can kind of call attention to that. In my case, it was just being able to conceive. It was hard for me to conceive. So that was stressful. So it could be anything that's causing, this downward spiral. And so if you're paying attention, you're asking these things because you know all the different facets of a person's life. And you ask that first, like, what's triggering? And this is what I'm noticing. And not in a way to make them feel bad or guilty, but this is what I'm noticing. And that's what we have to do as, as a spouse. That's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to pay attention to your spouse and ask those questions. So I would say start there with first asking, like, what's happening? I'm noticing this, this, and this, and this, and this, as opposed to saying, you need help. Let's find out first what's happening. Like, this is what I'm noticing, because you have your facts. You're seeing that person. You're not just making a judgment call. You said, I've noticed this. You haven't gone to work in 5 days. The blinds are closed. You're not eating. If you're paying attention to your partner, you can kind of come with that. And then you lead into, the other questions, or saying, hey, do you mind if I, recommend something? Or you don't just go in telling somebody what they should do. You say, do you mind if I give you some advice? Do you mind if I recommend something? Or can we talk about, potentially getting some help?
I love that. I love that. Let me do this real quick. Let me jump over to our questions and comments. So I see Vivian. Hey, Vivian Culver. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight. And hey, Vella, that's one of my good friends from college. Thank you, ladies, for joining. Everybody else that's on, by the way, thank you so much for joining. Please don't feel embarrassed or afraid to ask questions or drop a comment. We really want to hear from you. It's going to be beneficial, not just to us, but to everyone else. So Vivian says, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in 2022 and PMDD 2025. Now, I'm not sure what PMDD, but you could tell us what that is, I'm assuming, Anika.
Is that PM post? Is it something with PMDD? Post,
I
PMDD.
won't make you guess. Don't worry about it. So, hey,
Yeah, I
Vivian, if
can.
you wouldn't mind, could you tell us what PMDD was? But she was diagnosed with PMDD in 2025. And she says, I'm currently in therapy, which is helping. I realized I was suffering. So that's wonderful. We want to say shout out to Vivian because we're glad that you're getting the help that you need. Thank God. Let me just say this real quick. Thank God for mental health therapists such as yourself, Anika. One of the things that I know and I realize about being in ministry, a lot of times people will not go seek help because they think all they need is prayer. They believe that their pastor or the minister or whomever at the church is the end all be all. I know someone personally, not necessarily this wasn't a mental issue, but a physical issue. They had developed cancer. They had gone to their pastor. The pastor prayed for them and said, you don't have cancer anymore. They had cancer. They died from cancer, Anika, because they believe what the pastor said. All right. And so the pastor is not the end all be all. Why do you think God created doctors?
Yeah.
And he created pastors and he created everybody else who created. We all have a position to play. If you are suffering and you need help, your pastor, yes, he will pray for you. But I will tell you, if it's me, and I pray that the pastor will say this, go seek the help that you need. Yeah. If you have a broken leg, yes, if you come to me, I'm going to lay hands on the broken leg. I'm going to pray for you. But the next thing I'm going to say is, why are you here? Let's go get you to a doctor to go get this leg taken care of. That's the same thing with anything else. So let me just put that right there.
Yeah.
But Vivian, we're so glad that you got the help that you need. And just thinking about what Vivian said, and I would love your feedback on this, Anika. It was wonderful, and it is wonderful that she realized herself, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, well, and I was actually going to say the PMDD, it has something to do with your menstrual cycles. Maybe a lot of people have bad menstrual cycles, and that's having bad cycles. If I'm not, I don't really treat a lot of people with PMDD, but I do recall it is something to do with your menstrual cycle. And I know having menstrual cycle really impacts your mental health, your mental, when it actually, when you are menstruating. So a generalized anxiety is something that's a lot of times people can't put I think the thing with generalized anxiety, a lot of times people can't put their finger on why am I anxious? Why am I anxious? And so it's generalized anxiety. A lot of what we have to look at is there's a family history.
Let's definitely talk about that.
Yeah, we don't think about the family history. When you marry someone, not that you wouldn't marry someone because they have anxiety, because I'm not saying that you should not, but I think it's something that you should discuss. If there's mental health, if there's mental illness in a family, like a personality disorder, because they say it like skips a generation. Let's say somebody has bipolar disorder, and I'm not claiming anything, but I think we do have to be aware that these things are. So yeah, for a family history, being mindful of like, okay, let me ask mom, let me ask grandma, because mom and grandpa and dad, they're not necessarily saying it. So you don't know it.
Yeah. What's interesting about that? I got a full panel blood test done about almost a year ago. And so I immediately went back to my parents, my siblings, and I shared that with them because I wanted them to know what was going on with me. And I did it for two reasons. One, I wanted them to know, but two, my doctor said, hey, did you know that you had this? And I was like, nah. It was like, well, somebody in your family has this. And I was like, I'm not sure. He's like, how do you not know that somebody in your family doesn't have it? This is where I want to pause for a second. I want to sit this right here before you, Anika, because this is a major problem, especially in the Black community. We do not talk about mental illness at all. It is definitely a stigma. It's one that a lot of people suffer with, and they won't talk about because there's been so many bad things said about someone who has mental illness. I say this because we have cousins we know that are suffering, maybe even siblings, uncles, aunts, whatever the case. We've seen, like you said earlier, we had an uncle, crazy uncle so-and-so. Or remember so-and-so, because you think about it, you had an uncle that stayed in the basement, never came out the basement, except for like when it was time to eat, and then went right back to the basement. We don't talk about this. So my question to you is, how do we begin having these discussions? Because people won't tell you. And the thing that makes me upset about this, Anika, is that they know they have something. They won't tell you because they're embarrassed. And what happens is you wind up having it, and you could deal with it better had you known about it, but they didn't tell you. And so you didn't even know. And so you're 40 years old. You're trying to figure out, why am I suffering from this? You're suffering from this. It's not a result of something you did, but it's in the bloodline. And you just happen to be the one to get it. And somebody knew this was taking place, but they didn't tell you. How do we deal with those people? And how do we have conversations with people to say it's okay to open up? Before you answer that question, I did look it up. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were correct.
Yeah.
But how do we have those conversations and we get people to realize it's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about, that you need to, in fact, tell someone that you're suffering from it, so that the next person, even if they have to go through it, it's not as bad.
Yeah. Do what we're doing right here, Michael. Having the conversation, normalizing these type of discussions, because when we talk about it, we got to desensitize people. It's like exposure therapy. It's like exposing people, like, these are the things that when you get married, I think these things should be discussed. And not that you're trying to cancel somebody out, but I think just having the discussion, I just feel like our parents and grandparents, they're not changing.
No.
That's done. They're not. No, is what it is because of their experiences. I'm not saying I'm blaming them for it, but they weren't taught that. But this new generation, I think our kids, we're like showing up saying, "Hey, listen, you good? You want to talk about something?" Or I remember when, like I said, I'm open to the fact that when I was a little younger, in my 20s, I suffered with anxiety. But it was a reason behind it. I was going through some things, and so there's always a why to what and we don't necessarily label like, I am going through this because, right? But it's just a function of having these conversations, and in each of our families normalizing the discussion. And like with my kids being in relationships and stuff like that, I say, speak in detail with the people that you're in relationship with, whether it's just a friend, romantic relationship. Have some conversations about things, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And that's what people don't want to do. They're so afraid. And I think the other thing though, Michael, let me not blame people for not, I think people just don't have the language. They don't know how to initiate the conversations. Even with me, with my friends, if I do like a mental health check, we all can do that. You don't need to be a therapist to do a mental health check. So it's just a combination of things I think needs to happen to answer your question in a nutshell. Have these kind of discussions, normalize it within our families, and have conversations. Because I don't know if my grandmother and grandfather suffer with anxiety. I don't know.
But I guess, so thank you for sharing that. But how do we have it? Because there's some of our family members, notice, Anika, you can introduce it, they'll lie to you. Or they'll just bypass you or won't say anything. And what I'm realizing, and I'm because like you said, we do it with our kids because we're a few generations removed from that. So it's a little easier for us to have a conversation. In fact, we probably bring it to our kids because we're like, hey, matter of fact, when I had my blood panel done, I took it straight to my kids. I was like, all right, listen, I want you to get tested for this, get tested for this, get tested for this. I talked to my wife about it. I was like, hey, this. But how do we do that? Because some of our family members, they're just not open to it. Like, they're very closed off to having a conversation, if not mental health illness, definitely like a regular physical illness. Do you know how difficult, I'm just saying this is a question I'm putting out there. It's a rhetorical question. Do you know how difficult it is to have a conversation with your family member about them being sick and saying, do you have this? Because the doctor told me I have it, and the only way I could have gotten it is to gotten it from you or from you. One of the two of you, this has come from. And both are saying, well, I'm not sure. Listen, come on now. Somebody knows. I want people to be able to have these difficult conversations with people, because we all know and come in contact with somebody who's suffering from some sort of mental illness. It's a lot more common now. Maybe it's not a lot more common now, but it's more talked about. It's more acceptable, right, than it used to be. And so we have to, begin to talk about it. But how do we get them to talk about it, to open up about it? Because a lot of them don't. And then my part two question is to you. Well, I'll wait, because it's not a part two, but it's something else I want to ask you.
Michael, like I said, I just feel like for some people, they are stuck in their ways and they're just not going to, because it's an, for them, for some people, it's an admission of weakness. You know, you have a lot of people, when people do suffer with mental illness, they'll say, if you have a lot good going for you, what did you got to be stressed about? What do you got to be depressed about? You got that, you got this, you got that. So they're like, there's no way, you know, you should be depressed. You know, that's just like, if you're wealthy and have a big home and all the material possessions that you're not supposed to be. So people just kind of dismiss people with mental illness. And so I feel like the people who are team total wellness, they're there. But the people who are not, it's just no getting around it. Because here's the thing, Michael, sometimes people don't show signs of mental illness and they suffer in silence. They could be smiling. People who have committed suicide, and you're like, just like the guy, what's his name was Twitch.
Oh yes, the DJ.
Yeah, always dancing and smiling. And
Yep.
I think one of the ladies that she was, I don't know if she was like, she was in a pageant. They were always happy. And no one would have never known because they just had the smile on their face. And it's because a lot of times we can't go to people and say, I'm suffering, because they dismiss it. Oh, you all right. And so because they don't want to deal with it. So some people just don't say nothing. So in front of you, I'm just happy. But behind closed doors, I'm in a corner, rocking, bawling, crying, because you have told me I don't have a right to be depressed and anxious because I got money, because I got a nice car, I got a good husband, I got a good wife or whatever, I got healthy kids. You ain't got a right to be depressed and anxious. So people just suffer. They don't say anything. So that's just really sad.
You just hit on something. And again, especially in a marriage, that's crazy that you feel like you couldn't tell somebody, because the young man was married and he didn't feel like he could even tell his wife was blown away. Like she said that she did not know her husband was going through all of these different things. She thought he was happy. But my question to you, Anika, is there any kind of way, there's got to be some sign of some sort, right? To let us know there's no signs at all. There's nothing.
It is. If you're paying attention, Michael, you really got to be paying attention to people.
Like, what should we be paying attention to? Like, specifically, because I'm wondering, how did she miss the sign that her husband was at that point? Like, this guy literally, he removed himself from earth. Like, how do you, like, sometimes you can see a person or think a person is upset or something's going on with them, but to get to that point, like, is it something that she missed? Is it a little thing? Is it a big, what is it?
It could be, well, the thing is, for a lay person, it's hard. I think for me, I'm an empath. So I feel everything people feel. And that's, sometimes I feel like that's a blessing, but at the same time, it's a little too heavy sometimes, because I feel everything from somebody. If you're close to me and I see you, I'm like, what's going on? You good? Not everybody feel that. And if you're not that kind of person, you may not realize it. And so I can see, if you're not an empath like myself, you can miss it. You can miss certain signs. I mean, if somebody is irritable, if withdrawn, not communicating, it's some subtle things, you know, spending money excessively, just seem to, like I said, always sleeping excessively. There are just certain signs, but like I said, everybody is different in terms of how they deal with stress. And then some people just don't know how to check on people. They don't know what to say, because mental health is such a uncomfortable conversation. Like, for instance, when I do my mental evaluations, one of the things I say is, are you homicidal? Are you suicidal? And people don't want to ask that question, but sometimes you got to ask that question. When you see somebody in a dark place, do you think you're going to hurt yourself? Because some people say, well, I don't want to ask that because I don't want to put it in their minds. Right? So it's just like, if you're a lay person, sometimes we got to ask. You may not say, are you suicidal? You may say, hey, I just see you're in a dark place. Do you feel safe? Do I got to be concerned about something? wants to say that because it's uncomfortable. We're not thinking about the person at that point. We're thinking about ourselves. Like that is an uncomfortable thing to ask. So for in terms of her seeing signs, she may not have seen the signs.
Yeah,
Dismissed it.
yeah, that's so I don't know what to think on that. It scares me to think that you could lie in the bed with somebody, think you know them that well, and they're that place,
Yeah.
right? And you missed it. And as a layperson, as you said, I don't consider myself to be an empath by any means, but I do feel like at times I can tell like if I'm on the phone with you, I can hear if something is not right. Like I know I don't know what it is, but I can just feel if something isn't right. But I'm not like you, where just, if we're just in person, I just like, oh, okay. Sometimes I can see it, sometimes I can't. I guess my thing is I'm unnerved by the fact that we missed a signal like that. And how do we become better at recognizing and paying attention? Or is that it? We just need to pay closer attention to our spouse. But what if you've been with somebody for 30 years and you think because you don't know everything about everyone, right? But you've been with them for 30 years, 20 years, and you think you know these things. I'm just trying to figure out, how do we get to the place where do we pay even more attention, so forth and so on. I can see if somebody's sleeping excessively, you're like, okay, wait a minute, are you feeling sick? Or if you haven't been to work in a few days, yep, I get that. But I'm just trying to figure out, man, what is it? Did the person leave a breadcrumb to say, I'm about to,
It could be something real subtle, right? Like you said, whether it's sleeping, whether it's agitation, you're being irritable, you're snapping it a little more. And that people don't necessarily say, oh, well, you're suffering from mental illness. Maybe just moody, right? They don't necessarily label a mental illness with it. But I think we just need to do mental health checks because just in life is stressful. So there are things that we should just be asking one another, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your friend, your kids. Hey, just checking in, especially if they are coming from a stressful situation, whether it's work, whether it's a relationship, because relationships can make or break you. Most of the disturbance that we experience in life is due to a relationship or the lack thereof. Everything is about a relationship, whether relationship with your money, with yourself, relationship with your kids, your spouse, your friends. When relationships aren't where they need to be and you don't have healthy people around you, those are the people you need to check on. You need to check on even more. So we need to always check on each other, always. But when people don't have good people around them, you want to really check in.
Yeah. Just real quick, I'm going to go back to the comments. Vivian says she says, I'll just read what she said. My husband started writing down my symptoms. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you. And he addressed me with his concerns. He was the only one that truly had a heart-to-heart to tell me I need help. Ugh.
Bless him.
Yes.
He loves his wife.
He does. He does. And I wonder if others may not have seen it, or if they may have been afraid to say something. Because I know sometimes that could be a very tense situation. It could be a very anxious situation for somebody having to have to tell your spouse, hey, is something going on? Yeah. We don't always want to approach our spouses like that. But thank you, Vivian, for sharing that. I did want to ask you, Anika. Oh, were you gonna say something, by the way?
I was just saying that's great. I'm not saying that a spouse that doesn't say it doesn't love their spouse. Let me just clear that up. But I'm just the fact that her spouse,
Yes. Shout out to Mr. Culver. That right there. Thank you for sharing that too. Again, one of the things I know that you have to do in dealing with people who have some sort of mental illness, especially as a spouse, and I know for some of this could be difficult. You have to be extremely patient. You have to be extremely patient with people who have a mental illness or suffer from mental illnesses or whatever the case might be. Because as a person who doesn't suffer with it, you don't always understand what is going on. And because you don't understand it, or if you've not been through it, it's difficult to relate, or even, and I think this is a true statement. You have to correct me here, Nika, if I'm wrong. It's hard to empathize because you've never experienced that. So how do you empathize with something you've never experienced before? Where do you draw from to be able to have that kind of empathy, before you might, push somebody too far, because, you just don't know.
That's a great question. It's almost, that's just like if you haven't experienced pregnancy, you don't know what it feels like. I
Correct.
remember, let me just give you a quick example. Like my sister, when my sister was pregnant, she was very sensitive to smell, different things. And she was like, Nika, can you please move away from me? Because that smell, it bothers me. And I'm
Mm,
like, girl, you good. And I wasn't sensitive to her needs. So when I got pregnant and I had all my symptoms, I was able to relate. If I was not, and I think it comes with maturity, even if you can't experience it, even if you haven't experienced something, your maturity, you have some maturity about yourself. You can say, I don't necessarily have to experience this because you can't relate, to try to gain some sense of understanding. But you make a very good point. If you haven't experienced something, it's very hard to have some empathy because you haven't experienced it. And
right.
so, again, these conversations right here, don't dismiss a person that says, help, throw me a life jacket. I'm suffering. You don't have to experience. Take that person for faith, for what they're saying. I'm stressed, I'm depressed, and this is what it feels like. But it is very hard if you haven't experienced something to have some empathy for someone. But you shouldn't dismiss that person. Just because you haven't experienced it does not mean that that person is suffering. But we have all experienced some heartache and pain in our lives. So even in that, even if it's just for a season, let's say you have a bad breakup, even so you kind of take people, think about the worst thing that has happened to you in your life and how you felt. You have people who have mental illness that's feeling like that all the time with it's chronic. You have a breakup, somebody die, it's acute, it's like intermittent, it is not like constant. But for someone with mental illness and it's chronic, that's what they're feeling most days. And so I would say, because that's a very good question, think about the thing that has stressed you out the most in your life. And we all have. If you've gone throughout life and not have experienced any type of turmoil or stress, you that's different.
Yeah. No, everybody has at
Every,
some point in their lives, right? And then, as we begin to wrap up, I want to ask this as well. A person who is, and this is just in general, how does a person come to deal with themselves? I have a problem,
yeah.
because we know everybody, has some little bit of stress probably about recognizing or saying to themselves, okay, I got a problem. One of the first steps I believe in AA is, or yeah, Alcoholic Anonymous is Alcohol Anonymous. I'm getting
You
this.
you're right.
Yeah,
AA, yeah.
yeah. So when, and this is hard to say sometimes, but when the first thing that they do when they bring people in is they'll say to them, the first step, you have to admit that you're alcoholic. We can't do anything with you if you won't first take that step, because nothing else matters, because you won't even acknowledge you have a problem. So how do you deal with clients, Anika, especially if you're in a married couple situation? This is a two-part question, because I believe the spouse needs to be in on some of these counseling sessions or whatever, just so they can kind of see what's going on and figure out what to do as well as the person is going through. So that's the second part. But jumping back to the first, how do I, if I'm suffering with this, admit to myself, come to grips with the fact that it has nothing to do with the fact that or there's nothing to do with being weak. It has nothing to do with, whatever the case is, I have something going on and I need to get help. How do you get people to see that they need the help and then get them to actually take the step to go get the help?
Yeah. Yeah, they got to be one. I think in counseling, what I often tell people, I'm not going to work harder than you. You got to do.
Mm,
I'm going to lay it all out on the table. But if you are not willing to do the work, I can't help you. And so I think people, when they are tired of suffering, they get the help. But until sometimes I hate that some people have to hit rock bottom to get help.
mm,
But in some cases, people will go throughout life just untreated. And that's the reality. And so it's really up to the person. And you have loving people around you, just like with one of our viewers said that her husband paid attention and he was writing down symptoms, holding her accountable for getting help. And I think to me, it's pretty selfish when people have illnesses and it's impacting not only them, but the family. I think it's pretty selfish to not get help because, and so I think to answer your question, Michael, I just feel like people have to be ready. They got to receive, they got to be able, then they got to look outside of themselves. Like, especially if a person has given up and they're at that point of wanting to harm themselves. When you reach that point, I'm not saying that it's at a point of no return, because you can pull yourself out of that if you get the proper care, you have loving people around you, and you want the help. But you have to just want it. And that's just the reality. I mean, and then have people holding you accountable, cheering you on, and say, you're not crazy. People go through things because if a person is there, it could be, again, their environment, their circumstances. If a spouse cheated on them, like I said, I get a lot of women who are in counseling because, that has happened and they're working through that anxiety or trying to trust the person again, or vice versa, or it's from family. But it's many reasons why a person would fall into mental illness, whether it's a family history or it's more situational. Situational is, okay, somebody died, you're grieving the loss of a relationship, a divorce, loss of employment. Those are situational type of mental illness, and people can kind of overcome that a lot quicker than if there's a family history and it has gone untreated for many years.
Yeah. So question, I do know, I'm assuming this, there are plenty of tests for different types of mental illnesses. Would you recommend just, as a part of your regular physical, even if you think you're okay, to go get a test? And I'm gonna tell you why I say this. Every year, for the most part, that I was in corporate America, and I still do it from time to time, but not as much, especially towards the end of my career in corporate America, I had stress tests done because I knew the kind of stress and the pressure I was under, and I just didn't want to fall prey to a sudden heart attack or a stroke. Just because I knew, like, I was under a tremendous amount of stress. Would you recommend that? Like, I tell men that I know, I've really not spoken to women about this, because men, I see a lot of men dealing with these things, and I've just probably not paid attention to women, because I'm sure women deal with it, right?
Yeah.
But just, I know more men, than I do women, and I engage with more men than I do women. But I always suggest to them, when you go to your doctor, get a full panel, because some people don't know what full panels are.
Yeah.
When you get, it's beyond your regular test. You get screened for every single thing, so they find more stuff.
Right.
And then also get a stress test, because you need to figure out where you are in your life. And I say this because we're dealing with some very interesting times. We're living, I don't want to say it's the end times, because we've said this 20 years ago. We said this with other presidents or whatever, but we're living in some very stressful and difficult times. And a lot of people are mismanaging stress, and they're going to get up out of here fast because they don't realize they're under this amount of stress and pressure.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I think I think a lot of the, PCPs, they are, having those assessment
Primary care physicians. Primary care physicians.
Yeah. They are actually, thanks for clarifying that. But yeah, they are actually having these assessment tests. However, the thing with that, Michael, people have to answer their questions accurately.
Ooh.
Some people, let me tell you.
They're lying? Are you saying they're lying?
They're lying.
Okay.
But they're lying because they want to, I don't do that. I can't say I do that. Oh, no, I can't do that. So, so when I give these assessment tools, I'm like, well, why are you here? I said, let's go over it together. And I'm gonna ask you, Because when I see all these zeros, no, 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 and no, because it's really calculated by the number.
Yep.
And when I see that, I'm like, what you saying and what you put on here does not match.
Yeah.
So let's go through it together. And so you got to be careful when you give these assessment tools, people are not answering them accurately.
Ooh.
Trying to manipulate the diagnosis.
Yeah. I'm wondering too, Anika, would it even be better just to sit down and say, hey, listen, I want to give you a quiz, but this is going to be kind of an open book quiz.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit in front of you. You got a set of questions. I have the same set of questions in front of me. I'm going to ask you this question and you tell me an honest answer. Right. Give me a 1 to 5, as opposed to just fill a sheet of paper out. I can see why somebody would do that because people don't always know, and this is tricky too. You don't know what your physician is going to do with the information, because now the information gets sold. You could wind up losing your job.
HIPAA. That is.
Yeah, I mean, but think about this now. You're right. HIPAA is supposed to protect you, but we now know that, at least we believe this. When Doge was in place, we don't have no idea what information they were collecting. You have zero idea. And I can tell you from somebody, because I worked in what we call mining data. And
wow,
mining data is basically just sorting through data to look for different things do these different analytics and analysis to figure out different things about different people to be able to sell them for what I was doing, to sell products. But what happens is you start mining for other data that could be informational, or that could be resourceful, or that could be financially lucrative, because you figured out that this many people in this demographic do the same thing, that live in this same area. So you begin to target them for this, that, and the other. So anyway, in mining, all of these different things come up, but you might wind up selling off a bunch of information, and that your medical history, believe it or not, is some of that. Some of that information is sold off. You know how the DMV, you'd be surprised what kind of information that the DMV or NVA has on you. Because, see, here's the thing, right? And I don't want to get too deep into this, but I'm going to bring somebody else on to talk about it. When you sign off on documents like your contracts, and you're giving this information about yourself, sometimes you don't realize that you've given a lot more information. Like sometimes I get very concerned about Google, because Google can track everything, your movement, what you eat, what you listen to, what you're looking at, what you're viewing all day. You know, that's how these algorithms get built, is based on your habits. In any event, I said all to say, going back to what I asked you before, I believe that when you go to the doctor, you should get these different tests as well. Like I'm starting, especially as I'm getting older, I want my children to be in a better place. My grandchildren, my great grandchildren, as these events in your life start happening, you're like, how can I leave this earth better for my children and others than it was for me? Because I realized, as we started at the beginning of this, not all of our relatives have given us information that will put us in a better place, because we know we have relatives in our families who have suffered with mental illness, but they've not said anything. I want to get through a couple of things. Vela said this. Thank you, Vela, for participating and jumping on. I appreciate you, young lady. This is one of my friends from college. She says, woof, I can't imagine feeling like that all the time. She was talking about when, the anxious part, that you so much. She said, thank you so much for this conversation. And then she says, additionally, and this is the part I really want to read. Not that the other part wasn't important, but this right here is probably the thing I want to highlight. She says, I thought I was healed after my divorce. And I want you to talk about this, Anika, but I realized once I started a new relationship that I wasn't. I'm currently in counseling to deal with that, as well as childhood trauma, Anika. The anxiety I was experiencing made my heart condition worse.
Yeah. I think, and that's the beauty of relationships. It's through our interaction with each other that we come to learn things about ourselves. And when you're in relationship to people, certain things come out, certain triggers, it could be a way their tone. It doesn't necessarily have to be offensive. It could be a touch. It could be different things that cause a person to kind of go back. The body keeps the score. If you've had some physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, the body keeps the score of all that. And when you're triggered, especially in a relationship, you start to say, "Ooh, I haven't healed. I need to deal with."
Mm.
That's the beauty of a relationship.
Yep.
You kind of mirror is held up, and you start if you're not ignoring it. So I think that's
And
good.
being honest too, right?
Yes, being honest, and the fact that she was honest and said, "Ooh, things are coming up." That's just such a. If everybody had that attitude, I think we all need counseling. As a therapist,
Yes.
I have a therapist. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you have somebody that you talk to because you
Yeah.
have a past. You have a past. You know, it doesn't have to be your current situation, but sometimes you just want to talk things out. You know, as a therapist, you know, I get compassion fatigue. I love, love, love what I do, but I got to take care of my mental too.
Yep.
So
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, cut you off. I was going to say, I'm so glad you said that we're not just dealing with our present, but we're also dealing with our past, because a lot of us don't realize your present isn't as good as it could be or as well as it could be because of your past. Your past has a lot to do, and it impacts everything and who you are to this very day.
it does.
We got to get ready to wrap it up because
Okay.
we're at the hour mark. But I wanted, before we get off, I want to do two quick things. I
Mhm.
want you to, I'm gonna have the last word, but I want you, because I want you to do this. Well, maybe you should have the last word. You'll have the last word.
No, you have the last word.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
positive. This is your show.
Okay. I
You got that.
apologize. Okay. All right. So I'll have the last word. But before we go, I want you to give us an encouraging word to help us who are married. First of all, to help those of us who are married or in relationships, very serious relationships. Give us a word in terms of this mental health thing and how we can be a better spouse and helping our spouse or people who might be related to us, or maybe they aren't related to us, to be more intentional, to pay attention, to look for signs. And then I'll come in with the last word.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think one, create a safe space for people, right? I think we got to be very careful of our language around people because people make note of how they experience you. And if you're
Ooh,
in a safe
say that
space,
again. Sorry, say that again.
what did I say? Oh, people make note of how they experience you.
Yes.
So I think we have to be good with just really being direct. It's okay to need help. It's okay to want help. It's okay to ask for help. You know, it's just saying, I mean, people need to hear certain things. Okay, to admit that you need help, but create a safe space for people to come to you. Because again, marriages, mental illness does not destroy marriages. Untreated mental illness destroy marriages. So just
Oof.
safe space. Create a safe
Thank
space.
you so much. Ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Last thing here, we're going to close out. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us on tonight. If you haven't done so yet, please do me a favor, or especially on the YouTube side. If you're on Facebook, I really need you to do me a favor tonight, as soon as possible, as soon as we're done. Go over to YouTube to my Mandatory Conversations podcast with Mike Johnson and do me a favor and subscribe and like, because it makes a difference. All right. So please do that. Second, thank you so much for joining us on tonight. Every Monday, I do this relationship series with Anika here on the podcast because we just know that it's important for helping to strengthen relationships, especially the marital relationship, because that's something she and I both have a serious passion for. And we want to see marriages thrive. Not that we don't want to see other relationships thrive, but marriages are under serious attack. And we want to do what we can to help lend our expertise and experience to help you become a better spouse or a better mate in these different relationships. So thank you so much. Last thing, because Anika, you made me think about this. I've been thinking about it since you started talking, but as you got almost towards the end, it made me think about this even more. And here's what I want to do. I want to challenge all of us, especially who are married, to go home and talk to your spouse tonight. Start a conversation if you haven't already. Even if you have, ask them if they're okay. And then allow them and give them permission to ask you from time to time if you're okay. Anika, I had one of my frat brothers, great frat brother, client friend. We were talking. He was submitting an order. We were doing everything by text, and he sent me a message, Anika, and he said, Michael, are you okay? And I said, yeah, Fred, I'm good. He came back and he said, no, Michael. He said, listen, I'm not like meaning, are you okay in this moment? Okay with this order? I'm asking you as a person, as a man, as a friend, frat brother, how are you doing? He said, I see you doing all of this stuff. He said, man, you got 1,000 things. You moving at this pace. And I said, I had to, in fact, I haven't responded to him, but I'm going to go back now because we're talking about this. and let him know, first of all, thank you for asking about him, because a lot of times people who are perceived to be strong are never checked on because they're perceived to be strong. So why would you need to check on somebody that's strong? Because they're already strong. Even strong people need to be checked on because you're not strong 24/7, 365. You might be strong in the moment. You might be strong for a situation, but I promise you, there are kinks in your armor. Every now and again, something's going to come up to challenge your strength, your mental capacity. And so we all need to be checked on. I don't care how strong you think you are. We all need to be checked on. But I want you to go home and I want you to talk to your spouse. I'm going to do the same thing. God dropped it in my spirit. When I get home, as soon as I get home, put this stuff down, say to my wife, hey, hon, I'm just checking. I'm just asking because I love you. Not because I really think something's wrong, but if I do think something wrong, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to come to you and tell you. And then second, I want you to say to them, please, I want to be a safe place and space for you. How can I do that if I haven't done it? Because I don't want something to happen to you that could have been prevented. I want us to have an open line of communication. So if you wouldn't mind, please do that tonight. God dropped it in my spirit for you, for me, and for all of us who are listening, because we want to be better spouses. That's why we're here on tonight. Anika J. Owens.
Woo! That was good. That was good.
Thank you so much.
Follow me on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff too. Just my name.
Yes. And again, follow me there. And then you can follow me on Instagram at JL_Michaels LLC. And then also I am Mr. Johnson Official. You can follow me there. And of course, on Facebook, you can follow me right here. I got to change all my name stuff too. And I tried to, but all these Michael Johnsons running around here. We got a popular name. It's hard to do it.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Michael L. Johnson, Jr.
But you're Michael J. Johnson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And by the way, since you asked me about the hat, anybody else you're interested in hats, you can go to my website, www.jlmichaels.com. This bad boy and others like it are out there. So if you want something, we can definitely help you. Or come visit me here in the DMV at 14412 Old Mill Road, Suite 201, Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I'm going to put this stuff in the show notes so you'll get it. But I want to say to my special guest, my co-host on Mondays, Anika J. Owens, thank you so much, young lady.
Thank you
for another fabulous show.
Pleasure to do this with you. Thank you so much, Michael.
It is a privilege. It is my privilege to do it with you. Thank you so much for joining me and taking this on. And again, thank you to everyone who participated on tonight, who got in our comments and made, who had questions and comments, so forth and so on. Listen, we out of here until I'll be back on Thursday. Anika, real quick, your podcast, you have one too. What's your podcast?
This is Behind the 90 with Nika. Oh, I'm sorry. Behind the 90. Behind the 90 podcast. Okay. And we're going to put that up in the comments and show notes too, so you'll have that as well. But come back and join me on this Thursday, and we're doing a follow-up. Anika, I hope you'll join us. We're doing a follow-up. I will be with my Silver Fox Squad brother again, Titus Unlimited. One of the things we realized in talking about in our last show on fasting, we talked about sugar. But I had people hit me up, Anika, in the comments and DMs and whatever else. And they say, hey, man, I'm out here struggling with sugar and I'm not sure what's going on. I can't get under control. And what the Lord showed me was people don't realize they're addicted, Anika, to sugar. And sugar comes in many different forms. And so for a lot of us, we don't understand what sugar is doing to our bodies, especially when you get to be 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. Life is so much different if you cannot break this addiction to sugar. And for some of you, you don't even realize you're addicted to sugar. So we're going to talk about this addiction to sugar and what do you do to break the addiction. That's on Thursday at 7 p.m. right here. Yep. So it's not just for men, though. So because I was thinking,
no, it's not. Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying it. Yes.
I was trying to kind of take a step back.
No. Thank you for that correction. See, this is why I like having you on here. One of the reasons why I like having you on here. Anika is right. This is for everyone. So this is for men, women. We did that special for men. This show, this podcast is dedicated to men, but it's for everyone. This information is for everyone. But on this Thursday, we want everyone to join us, especially if you're suffering with any kind of inflammation, all this other kind of things. You don't realize you're suffering because you got a lot of sugar in your body. You need to get rid of it. All right.
I need that.
Yeah. Please join us. It's going to be a great show. I promise you. We're going to get really in depth. People don't understand that sugar goes by many different names. So we're going to talk about what some of the more popular names of sugar are. We're going to really, really, really get into this. We're going to take our time and just we're going to get into it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Listen.
I'll share it too. So whenever you get the
I'm
information.
gonna put it out tomorrow. I'm gonna put the whole thing out tomorrow. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. Have a good one. Nika, hang on there for a second.
Okay.